And then of course the opposite, if you are shrinking it, metal will be forced and compressed into a smaller area, which will reduce its length. It is critical that you are watching metal and making sure it's not thinning out too much, because then you can get areas of too much stress where cracks would form. Anybody recognize this from out in our shop? Probably been sitting over there like, wonder what that is. Well, it is a shrinker stretcher. So it has these little pieces that you put in here, and then it's foot operated, and now I have a video of a guy doing this. But this squeezes these two pieces together, and as you work the piece of metal through it, if you have the shrinker pieces, it shrinks your metal down. The stretcher pieces will stretch it out. If you ever do this, make sure you have matching parts. So you have two shrinkers. If you have a shrinker and a stretcher, then it won't do much of anything other than damage your material. So just something to check if you ever use that. And you can also use forms like a V-block to shrink the material down into that form. You can buy forms if you're rich, or you can make them. Wood is the easiest thing to make them out of. You can just shape the wood into whatever you desire. And here is our first video of shrinking and stretching.
Hello guys, today I just want to show you about shrinking and stretching. There's a few different types of machines around, and from the basics back to when I used to do it using pliers and things like that in my early days when I was shaping bits of metal and wasn't quite sure. I didn't have the shrink and stretcher, so I made a 3-pronged pair of pliers like that. And what you can do with that is you've got yourself your straight piece of metal, and in that regard it would just create a little pucker, and then every second one you just go in between, and then basically that would create the little puckers that come up and give you the shape to go around the bottom of, say, the bottom of a door, or the door might need a bit of a hook in it. There are ways of actually getting a bit of a bend in your panel. If you got it on a sandbag, you can actually just hit the edge of your panel in the sandbag and it will absorb the shape and it will give you a bit of a hook. If you haven't got a 3-pronged pair of pliers, you can use a pair of multi-grips, and then in that regard what you do is you bend one side up, one side down, and just keep moving along. One side up, one side down. Just gives you a pucker. Now in a hidden spot underneath the panel, you don't really see it. You can get the shape in there, and then you can dress out your little puckers, or it'll just sort of keep the shape anyway. Now if you've got access, or you go out and buy yourself a couple of different types of, or we've got a couple of different types of shrinkers here. So this is the old one that served me well for many years. This is actually stretching. It's got the stretching head on there. So you put the panel in there and you push that, and it just stretches it out just that little bit, which gives you your little bit of a stretch on that side. Or on the other hand, you can shrink it. Now actually I've got stretching heads on that one as well. So we jump from this little hand operated job onto a foot operated stretcher as well, and same deal. You just got a little bit more throat here, whereas this one here's only got about 25mm for doing good for edges and stuff. But this one gives you a little bit more purchase for doing inside a compound curve and giving you a bit of depth. So same deal. This one here, you just push that, it gives you. It just accentuates it a lot more and gives a nice even stretch. All right. So the idea of compound curves, sometimes you might want to make the shape of a panel in, or get a copy of a profile. So you can actually use these to get a compound curve. So you use it that direction, then you turn it sideways and you use it the other way. It gives you the whole different profile. But this can also be for an inner edge of a mudguard or something like that. You might need to, create something like that, but that can be good as a pattern. It sort of gives you a three-dimensional pattern. I use it for doing big panels, or sometimes just fold this. You can buy yourself some like needle gauges or shaping gauges and things like that. But in this regard, you can still get a full compound curve, fairly accurate, using this this technique. Particularly on something like a compound curve there. Then we jump over here onto the Eckhold, and it's air operated, this particular one. It's just sort of a one-man show, and then it just pulls it around as you go. And that really accentuates your compound curve. When I folded this over on the wheeling machine after I've shaped it, folded the edge over, now I can actually pull that around into almost a half circle. You won't get the full circle because you won't be able to get around the whole side of the shrinker anyway. So there's your compound curve sort of coming around a bit more. Now I can do that on that one, and then I can go back here and then straighten out the centre of it, and we can see what happens. This is just a little piece of aluminium I've got. So then that becomes a bit of a little trailer mudguard or something similar. Anyway, as you change the shape, as you straighten it out, you end up getting more shape in it. So they all do different things. If I was to pull this around more and more, you'd find that compound curve would flatten itself out quite some. So yeah, just things like that. Just little tips and tricks on shrinking and stretching. Hope you liked it. Thanks. See ya.
So, you won't be required to use all the equipment in the shop to complete the lab, but I would say if you are getting your lab projects turned in and kind of, getting stuff done, grab a piece of aluminum and practice this stuff, a piece of scrap aluminum, and see how the different machines work, because it's actually really fun, especially if you're doing something that's not required. It's like reading a book that's not a book report book. You can just have fun with it. So, a lot of this you do need to be using soft aluminum, which we have. And a super easy way, you can look on the back of it and see how it's labeled, but if you walk up to a piece of aluminum and you forgot to grab a soft aluminum piece, but even if it's 32 thousandths or, definitely 25, you can grab the end and just literally curl it down. That's how soft it is. So that's a super quick, easy way to keep it soft, and it will yield to all of these forming techniques relatively easily. Whereas if you grab regular 2024, you're gonna probably be crying tears. So some things to keep in mind. I also didn't grab the bean bag, but hopefully you've seen them out in the sheet metal shop, like little round bean bags. That you can take that and just squish into it whatever form you want. If you want kind of a bowl shape, and then you take a mallet and just start working the aluminum into the shape you want. There are wood, So if you have a metal form, you need to use a rawhide or wooden or plastic mallet. If you have a wooden form, then you can use a metal mallet. So never metal form, metal mallet, because then you're going to start damaging your aluminum piece. One of them needs to be wood or plastic or rawhide. And something that he mentioned in the video, crimping, is folding, pleating, corrugating, and used to turn down a flange on a seam. So the two terms, crimping, where you're making like tight little folds, versus bumping, which is more of a general, just whacking it into shape. And the curvature of your mallet, you pick the curvature, it kind of matches your shape. So if you want a nice big bowl shape, use something with bigger, larger curvature, or maybe even something big like this. If you want a tighter shape, then a smaller radius. And I have this very cool crimper guy that I'll pass around, and it's super fun to chomp aluminum with it. Here is an example. So we have mallets or hammers, and then crimpers or formers or notchers, and all kinds. So you can make a simple wooden form to match whatever shape you want. If you go to a really cool place, spare no expense. If their job is to make unique pieces of aluminum, they will have really cool forms like this, where each one of these pieces can go up or down, so you can make whatever shape you need. So that is like super cool. And then if you have some piece you want to fabricate over and over again, making it out of your form out of metal, because the wood will start to break down, splinter off after a couple uses. So make your form out of metal if you want to use it over and over again. And the next video, anyone know what an English wheel is and where ours is? Yes. So as you go into the sheet metal shop, immediately to the right there's this wheel thingamajiggy. That is the English wheel. And again, well, I'll talk about your lab later. You might not necessarily use it on your lab, but it is really fun and satisfying to use it. So here's a video on that.
Alright guys, today what I want to talk about is wheeling machines. Mine in particular is hand fabricated, done 20 odd years ago with the help of my father-in-law, who machined up some wheels and everything for me. Because at the time, you know, the ones that you buy these days in a shop weren't available, so you sort of had to have what you have. I couldn't get my hands on a big cast iron one that the coach builders use, so this is what I've got now, and it's done me for all these years, so I love it. I'm at one with my wheeling machine in different times. Yeah, it's good. I've used all different types. It's getting used to equipment that you're used to. The big cast iron ones, they don't they're fairly rigid and they don't move all that much. These do move a little bit, but if you're aware of how much they move, that isn't a problem at all, because you can still do your shaping and get used to how much movement and flex that you get in this upper end. This is fabricated, it has sort of three different angles on the inside and 2 on the outside, which is a box section. So it's quite rigid, but not quite as strong as the cast iron ones. But yeah, so there's a bunch of different wheels that I've got. There's your normal flat wheel that you have for doing tipping and rolling things flat. If you can use that in a bunch of different ways. If you cut out a piece of sheet metal and you want to just clean up the edge and it's a little bit rough from your tin snips or your shears, whatever it is, you can actually put your flat wheel in there, and then when you put it in, you wind it up, and then you just wheel it through, and I'll show you a bit later on in the video. We'll have a look. But that can just flatten everything out as you go. In saying that, you can tip the edge up so that sometimes you might want to just tip an edge over and you don't want any pressure at all on the inner part of your panel. So where you start to tip, you only want just the 2 edges on this part here to actually touch. So just putting a bit of sheet metal in, a bit of 1mm in there, and just locking it up, that can give you a nice straight edge that you can fold to, and you won't end up with any stress marks on the inside of your panel. Quick releases, they're good, not always necessary. I do have another wheeler machine, which is I bought one from a shop, still quite reasonably priced. Quick release isn't all that good, so I've just modified it to being hard and just wind it up to where you want it. Okay, so that gives you a little bit of a tip on that. There's a few different crown wheels that I have. It's not anything drastic, but that's a slight crown. There's a slightly bigger crown, which are beautiful when you're making just normal rolled panels. You can block them first, or you can actually just wheel them from scratch. Sometimes you want to get a really high crown. You can block the daylights out of something in your wooden block, and then you might need something to employ something like that, which gives you a higher crown. These are great for doing edges of vintage mudguards where you may have welded a couple of sharp edges together, and then as you roll it around, you can actually pull it around using these wheels. You can dress it up, or you can actually use it to wheel around at the same time with a wheeler machine. You swap this over. In this particular case, they're a different size in the cradle. These are just something that was made up. You take this cradle out, you put a different cradle in, and that allows you to change that, and it gives you also a wider area over a tighter angle to give you the profile change as you go around. So, okay, so the first thing I've got here is just a flat wheel, which is something that I've already done. Is I've cut this piece of metal, which we sort of plan on, we'll make a little bit of a chain case for a motorbike. Now what this has already been cut out of. It's got a bit of a burr on the edge. Now you can sit there and you can tap the burr on the edge around with a hammer or whatever, but what we've got here, we've got a wheeler machine, so why wouldn't we use it? And it's a rotary hammer basically anyway. So what we want to do is we'll just run that around, and that just takes the burr off it, so that when you start blocking, it doesn't actually, cut you, because it could be a sharp edge from your wheeler machine, and that's a nice blunt edge what we got there now. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll swap this over. I'll put in a crown. Alright. Just going to make a little bit of noise now. I'm going to do a bit of blocking now. Alright, so the idea is what we're going to do, we're not actually stretching the edges, we're only stretching the inside. So I'll probably stick to around the outside, from around the outside by about 25-30 mil. Alright. These puckers here, what we want to do, we want to block on the inside, but we still want to give those puckers a little bit of a hit, not too hard, just enough that it just squashes them down. I generally try and hit the same spot if you can, and move the panel around so as you hit the same spot. Move the Okay, so that's got out most of the puckers. It's still roughed out, but that's not too bad. I mean, we can sit there, if you've got a plenishing hammer, you can dress it up on a plenishing hammer, or if you don't have a wheeling machine, that's what you're going to have to do. But with a wheel, the secret is you can bang it out, rough it out like that, in pretty much no time at all. You can put it in there and then just start wheeling it out. Just a little bit of pressure, you don't need that much. Turn it a couple of different angles just to get your edges. Okay, so that's sort of banging it out. You can still see the hammer marks in the background, but the idea is try and keep it fairly flat as you can. Push down on that. Righto, so that's got most of the main crown done. So what I'm going to do now is swap that high crown wheel to a slightly lower crown and just finish off the edges so that we can just iron out those edges. Basically it's like doing the ironing with oil. Swap that over. There we go. Good thing about a quick release is you can just lift it up, drop it back in. Still a bit more to do. It. Alright, so there you go. It might be rough, but it doesn't really take that long if you've got the right gear and you've got a bit of an idea of how to do it. Then you know, that's it. So it's just a matter of utilising your equipment and making it work to your advantage. So pretty much that's what I can show you at the moment for a wheel machine. Good luck. Okay, thanks.
What happens when you put it in there. And it's very satisfying. Going from
Hi, I'm Lassie and I'm teaching people in metal shaping. And now we're making these tips and tricks for the English wheel. And you probably have seen it before, and I'm going to make another panel with this, and I'll also explain a little more, a little better what this black rubber does on the top wheel here. This is actually an inner tube from a truck tire, and I lay that flat on the table and cut the strip from it. And then I'm using this on the top wheel here. What this actually does is that the lower wheel pushing up the sheet in the soft rubber. So on each track it will be like a brake. But if you do several tracks there, it's going to be a smooth radius. So that means that the rubber band only bends the metal 2 dimension. We don't stretching the metal. And remember that, it's only bending the metal 2 dimension. And it's very useful when you make parts for all kinds of stuff. Let's say if you would like to make a new rocker panel for a car that has a little curve on it, but it's maybe 3-4 feet long, you can take not this roundest wheel, but you can take maybe this wheel, the second wheel, and you can roll that with a rubber band, and you can create that little radius on the rocker panel first, and then you can go to the brake and bend all the other the bends on it. It can also be on a 32 Roadster door, for example. We're making the crown first, the convex shape of the door, put the belt line on the door, but the top where you lay your arm, that's where we're bending it with the rubber band over. And when you do that, it will be, you're losing little of the convex shape or the radius of the bead and the door, so you need to shrink the top part of that. So I'm going to make a little test piece here for you so you can see what actually the rubber band does. The rubber band that I'm using here is 7.00/7.50 times 16-inch truck tire. So that comes from that, the inner tube comes from that truck tire. Then it will fit an 8-inch top wheel. So it depends on what top wheel you have, what size you have on the top wheel. But that will work for an 8-inch top wheel. So this inner tube here, I used that many times, so it's getting there, so I need to change that pretty soon. But you see, it's still working. So you can see here now that it's actually bending at 2 dimension. But you can also see that the end that I didn't wheel over, that one is still flat. So I can roll that a little more, turn it around, and I can just roll that part. I don't need to wheel the rest of it. I can just roll this part. And I'm not bending it at all. It's the rubber band that create that together with the bottom wheel, so it's actually pushing up the sheet in the soft rubber. So a long time ago I thought that it will be more smooth, the panel, if I used the rubber band or a soft wheel on the top. But that is not the case. It's actually bending it, okay? If you have a wider piece like this, and you're going to bend it like a drive shaft tunnel, what you need to do is you need to roll the sides first, so you got that shape on both. Then you can go into and run the center part of it, because especially if the sides go down, you can always do more in the center, but you can't do the sides. So you need to start with both sides first. So now we have a nice shape there. If I used a little less pressure, this will be more flat. I put it here on the top of the English wheel, so you can see that we have a little gap there now, so it's not 100% straight. But that's okay. If I used it with less pressure and did more times, it will be more straight. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to show you how to make this like that. And then I'm going to go back to the English wheel and smooth it out. So I go over to the shrinker and the stretcher. So I'm over here at the small shrink and the stretcher, and if you only have the small one, there's actually a piece that you can do, even if it's hand operated, but I recommend the one with the foot pedal because you have more power in your leg there. So I'm shrinking about 3 steps, turn it around, and shrink the same spot, but on the other side there. And in this case, I go all the way down with the pedal. So I do a little more on this side, and then I can go back on the other side again. And I'm looking from this view here, so I got the same radius on both, or at least very close. So they're matching there, if that's what you want. Then I can go over to the stretcher, and I have that on the other side here. And I do the same thing there, but I probably go a little deeper into the jaws to stretch that. And do the same thing on this side. And I can do a little more. And then I go over to this side. I think I should take a little more on this side. There you go. So now you see that we have one inner curve and one outer curve there. So now you see that I have some bubbles here. This is a narrow piece, so I can go over to the English wheel without the rubber band and I can smooth this out. If this panel was bigger, then I probably need to use a little different technique to get the same shape. I can always, in my shop, I can use the deeper shrink and the stretcher too to do this, and I can work with the bigger piece. So I'm back here at the English wheel, and I'm going to take the rubber band off. But when I do that, I'm also going to show you how to put the rubber band off on the wheel the easiest way. So put it like this, take your hands like this, and do this. That's the easiest way to do it, because in the beginning when I start using this is a problem. But now I figured out to put it over here on the top and just do this, and it will work good. But I'm going to take it off there now, and then I have just a block of wood to hold it up. And then I'm going to roll it here with the same wheel, but I'm going to smooth it out. So you see I have done one side there now. And you can see the difference between the sides there. Like that. So that one is smooth. And then I'm going to fix the dents here from the shrinker, because when I shrink hard on the edge, make this shorter, it will be too long here and create the bubbles there. And actually we don't want those bubbles at all when we're shrinking. But this is so narrow piece, so I can take those out with the roundest wheel here pretty easy. There we go. So in a few minutes you can have a nice piece like that, and you can go in with the shrinker and the stretcher and adjust it to the shape you want.
Sandbag with a mallet. If you're not whacking the aluminum lightly around the edges and gradually working down into the center. Started by tapping the aluminum in the center until it touches the bottom of the mold, and then working out in all directions. Cool. Got a couple bravos. Anything besides bravo? Very good. So, yes. Start at the edges, work down gradually into the center. Question. There's an interesting little tool. If you have shallow scratches in sheet metal, which one of those do you think you should do? Something called burnishing, something called buffing, or stop drilling? We've got an alpha. Anybody want to stop drill a small scratch, a shallow scratch? Okay, good. Anyone know what buffing is? Making it shiny, waxing, yep. So that's not going to help a scratch. So this is a burnishing tool. Burnishing is the correct answer. And whatever metal you have scratched in, your burnishing tool needs to be made of metal harder than the material you're burnishing. But there's all kinds of tools. There's power tools, there's hand tools. But you take this nice smooth portion and you just kind of work that scratch, moving the slight material that's displaced back down into the area it was scratched out of. So you're not removing any material, you're just kind of moving it back to where it belongs. Ooh, here's one. Repairs or, so this is not dealing with today's topic, but it's a really good one. Repairs or splices involving stringers on the lower surface of stressed skin metal wings are usually not permitted. Permitted only if damage does not exceed 6 inches in any direction. Permitted, but are normally more critical in reference to strength and tension than similar repairs to the upper surface. So, think about the wing of an aircraft and the stringers. How are they oriented in the wing? So, from the aircraft, this is the wing. Is a stringer running? Or is it running along the course? Good. So stringers running this way. And we have stringers on the top and stringers on the bottom. So how many would say any repair splice is not permitted? Correct. They are allowed. That's why we have sheet metal glass. Do you think that is a always limitation? 6 inches. Anybody say that should be brought up? Very good. So we're left with Charlie. Why is that? Let's say these were more reasonable answers. Why is that making sense to you? Because a lot of you already got this part.
Plane rests where it's lifted up from the bottom.
Exactly. I think, yeah. So in flight, yes, correct. So in flight, your wing is being pushed up because lift is lifting it up. So you're having tension on that bottom stringer. And what kind of force would be on the top stringer? Compression. So it is more critical in tension. And if you go to AC 4313, page 437, that's one of those riveting tables. And note A actually says pretty much this exact thing. So if you're ever like, how can I confirm this? It is in AC 4313. Any questions on that? Anybody for Bravo? Anybody for Echo? Anybody sleeping? So, Alpha's correct. Why not Bravo? So that you said Alpha.
Because you wouldn't change the molecular structure this way.
Exactly. So if you're annealing it, you must need to know what you're doing, and it cannot. It depends what if it's typically when they're saying members, they're talking about structural stuff. So you can't be messing around with annealing on structural stuff because will change the metallurgy. And if you were to apply heat, do you think you would do it to the inside of a bend?
No.
Correct. You're not. Correct. Let's come back to that one. Take a break and come back at 05. 05?
And then, so I like all that, and then we incorporate into that, and then like before we ran out, we were able to find another one. So it's like, and I remember we jumped, we kept it up in the top of the closet or I had.
My dad used to talk to and he said,
So I think, we
do
had.
the test over and over again to practice that. And once you're doing good, like our town will have a good foundation. And really studies. So like, we use it. So it's all in there. You just need to go to city council. And they're like, or at least city council. We're doing everything that they come here. We're so we did modern buildings. Show a picture. We put in the I'd like to do some times. And by the end of the year, it's dirty. It's still there.
Yeah. Alright, we'll get started. So the next question. The question says, what should be the included angle of a twist drill for soft metal? So first of all, what in the world is an included angle? Any ideas? What up here is included angle? I'll give you some options. So we've got, we'll use this first one here. So we got 59, like from that point to there. So 59 is option A. We've got no numbers, but an angle, if you were to split this straight down here, from here up to like that comes. So that's option B. And option C is if we draw this line and draw that line, then we have 118 as a number. So A, 59, B, unlabeled, C, this angle here. Brian,
Yes, ma'am.
what's the answer? A, B, or C?
Hey.
Leo, A, B, or C?
C. Yep.
Oh, did you hear?
No, but if it isn't A, it's gotta be C, it wouldn't be in the middle.
No, I see how I need to change my quizzes. So, how many would say alpha? How many say Bravo? Anybody beside addition to Leo and Charlie? So, on a drill, this is the included angle. So if you take a line from this side of the tip and a line from that side of the tip, and then take that angle, that's the included angle. It includes, yeah, the angle of the tip. So, having that in mind, if this is the biggest angle, 118, I didn't find a diagram that exactly matched these options, but 90 would be a little bit smaller than 100, and then 65 smaller yet than 182, or sharper point. So back to the question, what should be the included angle of a twist drill for soft metals? Do you want more broad, 118, little pointier, 90, or super pointy of 65? What are your thoughts? Got C. We got A. Anybody chew it up, nom 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 nom, and not go through it and destroy your metal. So, the best is the 90-degree happy medium, because you want it sharp enough to go through the metal, but not 65 is like super, super sharp, so that doesn't work as well. And you can totally try this stuff on scrap metal. So on that same thought, what should be the included angle of a twist drill for hard metal? We're going to go more broad at 118, in between 100, or sharper of 90. And how many for 118? How many for 100? How many for 90? How many don't care? I want to go eat a snack. Correct answer is 118. The more broad tip, so you can kind of grind it down into that hard metal. So these are some things you're going to kind of have to just memorize for the written. They will ask questions on.
So the 118, 100, and 82, that's the included angle.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And I kind of got lost. For the salt metal, you want, it was 90,
It was, yeah.
and that's a sharper,
It would be, yeah, kind of, you don't want too crazy sharp, because 65 would be even more pointier than that. But if it's much more than 90, then it'll just start to chew up the metal. So.
I guess I don't understand how that works. Like, if, wouldn't you take more bites, more out of the metal, each rotation with 90 is an 18, 118? Like, what, the sharper the angle with salt metal, then you would take too much out at one shot, or not necessarily.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay, so, on the aircraft tool supply, just looking like Pedro, that's just selling, alright, 135 piece. Not due for number drill bit. And we use the number ones for rivets, don't want typically just rivets and aluminum parts.
Say again.
Like, don't we typically just rivet aluminum, like, so that would be a soft metal they're drilling.
Yeah.
And they're using 135. Like if FAA says 90 so good, how can we know this thing?
Is that what your bits are?
Anybody got 90?
So here's a cool thing to try. Go in a tool room and see if you can find these different, and see how much of a difference